Alright, so we're checking out the Unicorn 2 from HOMFPV. So this is another whoop style 2-inch micro drone. I think it's like 85 grams. I'll show you the weight here in a second. Looks very similar to like the 85X from FPV. There's a lot of them that have this sort of 2-inch with the prop guards. A different sort of power setup in this one here. We have the HOMFPV branded motors. These are 1203 5000 kV, and these are the Gemfan 2036 4-bladed props. We have a 20 amp all-in-one flight controller and ESC combo there, so it's an F4 flight controller plus 20 amp BLHeli ESCs. And then we have the CADX Vista system here with the Nebula Nano 2 camera, and you got the CADX antenna on this one here. Now, some of their product photos, they have a HOMFPV branded antenna back here, and I think that's probably gonna be a little bit lighter. I think this is like an early version. You know, they sent out early versions to reviewers. I believe this flight controller on here, all-in-one flight controller, is the same one that was on the Micron 2. I think they may have added RPM filtering to this one, I believe. So I think I noticed that was different. The XT30 is at the front here, and you have a capacitor, and then you have a USB port here in the back. So it's fairly accessible, but this board here is completely proprietary. So if you damage an EC or something, you can't just buy something off the shelf and replace it. You'll have to get their specific board. You have this carbon plate on the bottom here to give the plastic frame some stiffness. It's about 1 millimeter thick. And then the battery strap is this way, battery front and back. I would have rather seen this whole thing rotated like 90 degrees with the USB port at the side, and then this battery connector at the side as well. I don't know, you might be able to do that actually. If it's actually a true X, you could probably rotate the whole thing. It might turn out better. But yeah, this whole frame and the bottom plate, the flight controller, it's all proprietary. These aren't like off the shelf like 20 by 20 parts or anything like that. And then, I mean, the advantage is that you get like the USB port is really accessible. But the disadvantage is if you break the all-in-one flight controller, you'll have to replace the whole thing, and then getting in there and obviously desolder everything and replace all the parts. Now, the Vista that's in here is not naked. You could probably make it a naked Vista and remove all the heat sinks and save about 10 grams if you want to make this a little bit more agile and lightweight. Obviously, this is a lot lighter than Micron 2 because this is not really meant for cine whooping. It's more like for indoor whoop racing, and it's got plenty of power for that. I did try and fly it outside in some pretty windy conditions, and I would say it did okay considering the conditions. But you'll also see at the very end, I fly around outside a parking garage with a little bit less wind, and you'll see that kind of gives you more of an idea what it'll fly like in an indoor space. If you're maybe doing some indoor racing, this would be really nice for like actually parking garage racing. This is something this would be perfect for that. You'll see that at the very end of the video. But here's the weight of the drone, and no battery. It's coming in at 91.6 grams. So the 85 gram weight may be due, maybe because they have used a lighter antenna back here, and maybe not including the battery strap possibly. Now, a few things to note. My unit did not come with a screw here for the camera. I added that because I only had one screw. I think it fell off somewhere in manufacturing. That's not a big deal because this is the standard M2 screw. I have plenty of those, so I was like, oh, there's a screw missing there, so I added that. I typically, before I go and fly anything, I just tighten down all the screws and check everything, make sure everything is nice and tight, so they don't come out when I'm flying. That's actually a practice that everyone should do regardless, because the screws do tend to come out sometimes from vibrations, and even though I screwed everything down and tightened it, I lost a couple of screws back here, and these screws are not M2 screws that go into these motors. So that's another thing that's proprietary about this company. They may do a lot of this kind of stuff, which I kind of disagree with, and I think many of you will do as well. Is this motor mount is a kind of a weird pattern. As you can see, it's like a 3-hole pattern for 1203, and then these are M1.6 screws. These are the same screws that go into like the 0802 motors on like the 65 millimeter whoops. So yeah, they didn't put Loctite in these, and even though I tightened them down, 2 of them flew out somewhere. while I was flying. They're gone now. Yeah, so you'll never find these. So and these screws are a little bit harder to source. You're probably not going to have extras, and there aren't any extras in the box. So what I would recommend is take the screws out, put a little bit of Loctite, and on the very end of the screw, and then put them all back in. Let them dry overnight before you go and fly them, because I guarantee you that these screws are going to be gone if you continue to fly them. And actually, after I flew a few packs, I went back through in here, and all of the screws were loose. So yeah, this is that these little M1.6 screws, they are meant for much smaller motors, and these bigger motors with this on force power is going to vibrate a lot more, and not really, these screws aren't really meant for this much power. So I'm not surprised that they're gone. Oh, I forgot to give you the weight of this with the battery I flew with. So I flew with this Beta FPV Force 450. That's the recommended size, a Force 450. So the battery is like 56 grams, and then with the drone altogether, it's 147.8 grams. So it's typical 2-inch weights. Nothing really that different about this one, other than 1203 motors. I do tend to like the 12 size motors over like an 11 size. If they wanted like 1104, I'm not really a fan of the 1104 size for this, or the 1105 size for a 2-inch. So 1203, 1204 is probably better for a 2-inch. And I think they went for 1203 and make it a little bit lighter overall. And that's probably why they went with that weird screw choice of the M1.6 screw, probably to keep it lighter. But again, in hindsight, I think that's would have been better is just use 2 M2 screws instead of 3 M1.6 screws. So something for them to keep in mind for the next time. In terms of the frame durability, it's got a fair number of scratches on here just from landing. As you can see, this is probably from asphalt or something. It's going to scratch up. This plastic is it's going to break in a hard crash. I can just tell it doesn't really give a lot. It's not a lot of flex, but in a hard crash, depending on the temperatures, you're probably going to want to find a replacement frame. Now, on Banggood, it's sold. The whole thing's sold for like $270 with the Vista. You can buy it without the Vista if you happen to have one already on the HOMFPV site for like $145, I believe, if you just want the drone itself. And then I believe on the HOMFPV site there's replacement parts for the canopy and the plastic guards. Interestingly, the plastic guard is not included as a extra part, but it did include an extra canopy. Although this canopy is pretty tough. I mean, you're probably going to break the camera before the canopy. So I would have rather have them include an extra set of prop guards instead of the canopy, just in my opinion. And there wasn't a whole lot else in the box. I think it had a bag and then an extra set of props, and that's pretty much it. So there's a lot of these already on my channel. Check out the Power Whoops playlist, and you'll see a lot more of these out there. And here's the flight footage. Oh, by the way, they did send along these goggle straps. These are new. They're kind of nice. I mean, I've got some pretty nice ones already on my goggles, but this is kind of meant for either Fat Shark or DJI. And you put the battery here on the side here. That's pretty standard. They do come with a couple of these metal clips here if you want to use them for your DJI goggles. But obviously you wouldn't use that for Fat Sharks. And then here's the green color. So if you're interested in some nicer goggle straps, with the wider back strap here, I actually have something that's even wider than this. I think it's from Fat Straps. It's like a 2-inch strap. You can get those at Race Day Quads, but this is HOMFPV is making their branded goggle strap for Fat Shark and DJI goggles. So I'll link those down in the description as well. That's going to do it for this video, and here's the flight footage for you. So it's pretty windy right now. You can probably see here with the trees. Yeah, and I have the windows open. I'm actually in my car, so you guys can hear what the tune sounds like in this pretty windy condition. It's not the greatest, not the best conditions to fly in for something like this size. Doesn't have a lot of power. give you an idea of what the conditions are like. A little bit of jello. It's pretty bright out right now. And the Nebula Nano is known for having a fair amount of jello and bright light, unless you have really good mounting with no vibrations. But you can see the wind is affecting the way it flies. It's kind of hard to tell what the tune is like just from the sound. I know that a lot of you guys think that tune sounds bad or good based on the way it sounds. That's not the whole picture. A lot of it has to do with the way it flies in terms of how it feels. And that doesn't come out on video or audio all that great. You can see, you can hear a couple things there where the wind's hitting it and then the props are reacting and trying to correct. Right there, you can see that when I'm doing that move, and that's the wind hitting it and the quad's trying to maintain the direction it's going. Yeah, the wind's actually pretty bad right now. So not really the best conditions. So I'm actually trying out the new beta flight rates. It just came with stock rates, I think, from the factory. So I'm giving the beta flight rates a try. It's interesting. There's a lot of, the center is fairly smooth, but then you have a lot of rotational speed if you need it at the end of the sticks. And running a 4S450 here. Not sure what the battery life is going to be. 3 minutes so far. Yeah, it's really hard to tell the tune from these windy conditions. Could be better, but you know, this is a whoop and is getting kind of pushed around with the prop guards, providing a lot of wind resistance. You can hear it struggling there in the wind. All right, we're in the battery here, 13 point something volts. Wow, let me know what you guys think. Wow, it's really windy. Alright, so I'm inside a parking garage now. Not as much wind. More echo from the noise. And I lowered the camera angle a little bit so I can fly a little slower. Maybe let's give you a better idea how it flies. Obviously, I'm not going to be doing any flips or rolls in here. It's a little bit too, the ceiling's a little low. But without the wind hitting it, yeah, it looks like it's flying a lot more stable. Fly through the car. Yeah, I would say the tune isn't terrible. I don't think it's I don't think any of these whoops are really going to do that great in a lot of wind like you saw earlier. Yeah, it's still a little bit of a breeze. It's really windy today. You can see as I get to the brighter section, a little more jello's coming out. And whereas less light, there's a little bit less jello. Try to go a little faster. Oh, now we're reaching the end of the battery. I think as the voltage gets lower, it does. I think it does need maybe the PID compensation for the lower voltage. It does seem like it starts to wobble a little bit more. Anyway, let me let you guys think.